Hello, everyone. Today at 23:26 something, so it's barely midnight, we're almost at midnight, London time, there's going to be an exact Uranus-Venus conjunction. And according to Julie Hall, my master, this is a dilemma between commitment and freedom urges. And it's not a particularly unheard of conjunction because it happens every 8 months. So the occasion is not really the Uranus-Venus conjunction itself, but the fact that it is on a point where the last year's November 8th lunar eclipse was. So actually it falls on a previous point. And this gives the occasion first to deal with prenatal lunar eclipses and prenatal eclipses per se. Eclipses are funny things in astrology and astronomy as well, because it's the only phenomenon that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and never to repeat itself again, because so they have a lifespan. Interestingly enough, this is quite long. It's usually for one series, it's usually 1300 years, because there are actually 72, 73 exact placements in one series, which occur every 18 year and a couple of days. So this is something that we are going to revisit once we are entering the eclipse season in April. But at the moment, it is important for us because it is it was exactly at the Venus-Uranus conjunction. So, and another thing is that gives me occasion, this chart gives me occasion to look at midpoints as well. Let's take a look at the chart itself for London, which, as I said, occurs at today on March 30th at 23:26, so 11:26 p.m. And there are a number of features in the London chart. First of all, Lilith, the asteroid Lilith, is exactly on the midheaven, which means in the Lilith myths, this is the first turning point when Lilith says that I don't want to be below you, signifying a moment in creation when the first woman decides not to accept some sort of underling position. And of course, in karmic astrology, the asteroid Lilith denotes revolt against injustice. And here on Mars, you find the vertex, and the vertex is where you don't have free will. At the same time, Mars requires you to exercise your will. And in Cancer, it is a mild Mars. It is filled with the water. It is filled with emotions. So either you are fighting for emotions or you are just withdrawing from them. And the vertex certainly takes away the energy of this particular planet at the moment. You have this sixfold conjunction about which I spoke a lot, so I'm not going to revisit this. But here you have the Uranus-Venus exact conjunction on the prenatal lunar eclipse. We call prenatal, let me explain this. What is prenatal eclipses? Well, gestation takes 9 months, usually. I mean, this is what it usually is. And during the 9 months, since eclipse seasons are every 6 months, there's an eclipse pair. Before or after a solar eclipse, you have a lunar eclipse. Sometimes you have both. I mean, you have actually 3 in a pair. And 6 months later, you have another series with a different geometry. And it means that during the 9 months, you will definitely experience at least one, sometimes 2 of these eclipses in the womb. And these points in time are very decisive, because the prenatal lunar eclipse is usually, in karmic astrology, we interpret it as the hidden urges of the soul, what it needs to experience, what it wishes to experience. And it remains hidden, and it sometimes remains just an urge. And so it's called completely unconscious or subconscious, really instinctual. Let's use another word. And it doesn't even manifest in a practical way or in any graspable way, but it remains an urge. So anyone who was born on the 30th or 31st this year will have this urge, because the prenatal lunar eclipse falls on the Venus-Uranus conjunction, which is the dilemma between freedom urges and commitment. It's quite fascinating. And you can see that in this very light lilac, I also circled the Sedna north node, because that is a midpoint structure. We are going to look at midpoint structures as well in this video. Let's take a look at the lunar eclipse on November the 8th last year, and this is for the London. That was the placement for London, and this is what Bernadette Brady says about this particular eclipse family or series in her book, The Eagle and the Lark. I recommend this book. It's a wonderful book for forecasting techniques, and this is the definitive book for Sarah's series as well. By the way, Sarah's series were noticed even by the Chaldean priests of Mesopotamia, and then a number of people were working with them. And the way Bernadette Brady works with them is that she takes a look at the beginning, the first of the series, and then researches the next ones. Every 18 years, there's a repetition of the same series. And what I think she did was she looked through the history of these series, the ones that are now active and actually appearing in our space-time and in our era. And she tried to assess what they were. And this is what she says about this particular series. This eclipse series is about being forceful and taking power. It has a manic flavor about it, which with great force on strength manifesting in the relationship area. It's wonderful because Venus-Uranus is actually about that particular thing. Individuals experiencing this Sarah series may experience sudden events, Uranus, like falling in and out of love, Uranus, Venus. It's so funny, or sudden sexual encounters. It's funny because that's exactly what Venus Uranus is sometimes about. Besides freedom urges and commitment, and it's typical of men, especially if you see a Uranus Venus any aspect in a chart, what you will see in the person, in the native, is that either he has these prolific sex life without committing and actually shunning commitment, because whenever he feels really strong love or strong emotions, he wants to get out of it because he doesn't want to lose his freedom. So it works very interestingly. In women's charts, it is more subtle, but it could be still there. And yeah, I mean, the one night stand experiences are very much linked to Venus Uranus and to this eclipse series. So it's quite interesting. She also says that the individual may also exert a huge effort in some group activity. Anyhow, this was last year's lunar eclipse. You can see that the sun was on the south node conjunct Mercury, and the moon was on the north node, dark moon Lilith, which is the second turning point in the Lilith myths, when Lilith takes upon the curse, Yahweh's curse upon herself, and doesn't go back to the Garden of Eden. And so this was interesting, to say the least. And then there's Uranus, of course, Uranus retrograding back to the exact point of the eclipse. So that was the last year. And then here are the midpoints that I promised. The one I circled is here. This is from Solar Fire, and these are midpoint trees. You can actually, if you have Solar Fire, you can see the midpoint trees page, because Uranus and Venus are exactly conjunct. You have the same midpoint trees, and of course, for each other, they have the placement as well. And these are, so there are 3 exact direct midpoints. The other ones we are not going to look at because it would be too complicated to explain what indirect midpoints are. Let's just for the geometry. If you have a single line, okay, it has 1 midpoint in the middle, of course. If you have a circle, it has 2 midpoints. One is nearer and the other one is the farther one. And if you have a sphere, you have 4 midpoints, okay, because you have, so that's the geometry. So if you calculate a midpoint, let's say a midpoint is at, I don't know, Taurus 3 degrees, then this will be the nearer midpoint, okay? Opposite it, at Scorpio 3 degrees, will be the farther midpoint. And then the squares, Leo and Aquarius 3 degrees, are the indirect midpoints. So you can actually work with all 4. Here we are going to just look at the direct midpoints. And so Venus-Uranus is first and foremost on the Moon-Saturn midpoint. Now, Moon and Saturn are not very easy to have in any form, in any either in a conjunction or in mutual reception or in a midpoint structure or in any aspect, because the moon is your spiritual essence. It's also your nurturing instinct. It's your mothering instinct. It's your subconscious. It's your emotions. And of course, Saturn is freezing all this. And whenever you see a Saturn moon aspect, it usually denotes, even the good ones may denote some sort of inclination towards depression. Of course, we can try to explain it in a nicer way. We can say that Saturn moon is about how to be a steadfast, hardworking soul, or someone who accepts hierarchical structures and not just accepts it, but can thrive in them. There are many ways to describe Saturn moon. It's not very nice, actually, not easy. So this Venus-Uranus conjunction, and here again, it's funny because whenever I look at any kind of conjunction, I take a look at the nature of the planets, because sometimes the conjunction is really a forced energy, since if they don't like each other, it's very, very difficult to make them work. And this is the case with Venus-Uranus as well, because Venus is trying to commit, it wants love, it wants security, it wants harmony, and Uranus wants freedom. So it's very hard to reconcile the two. And so is the moon Saturn to reconcile. So here it gets this this flavor, this type of, so anyone who was born today or tomorrow has this flavor of freedom urges, but trying to commit, and at the same time having either depressive pangs or just insecurity about it. And then you have the Pluto trans-Pluto midpoint. And this is interesting because Pluto and trans-Pluto are the Lord and Lady of the underworld. Trans-Pluto is linked to Persephone, but because there is already such an asteroid, we can't name it Persephone. But there's a wonderful book on trans-Pluto. You can Google it, which describes why it's why she can be linked to Persephone's energy. Anyhow, Pluto is the Lord of the underworld. It is power and transformation, and trans-Pluto is channeling. So that's what's added to the, and of course your own underworld, which is your subconscious, is added to this this thing. And then the third one, which I actually circled in the previous chart, is the Sedna North Node midpoint. And North Node is your chosen destiny, your chosen destiny task. And Sedna is creation through dissection. Sedna is linked to the ability to dissect anything that is a structure and which has non-working segments, and to be able to throw those out and then create a new structure out of the remaining pieces. And it also is linked to abuse and all sorts of family abuse, or abuse within the family on the personal level. On the collective level, this means that this particular Uranus-Venus conjunction is defined by our destiny choices, which we need to rearrange, which we need to rearrange in order to make them work. So that's those are the direct midpoints of the Uranus, Venus. And in the London chart, you have a water-earth crown. A crown is a mystic rectangle, which has also a harmony triangle on top. And here the crown jewel is Mars in Cancer. And the body of the crown, so the mystic rectangle portion, is made up by the nodes, Scorpio and Taurus, and also by the Saturn trans-Pluto opposition, which means to channel down something to the earth plane and understand it and use it, utilize it. And here you have the transcendental celestial objects linked to this. For Mars, you have Hecate, the dark moon goddess, and Socrates, a philosopher. I wish the leaders who are cretins of the earth would have some sort of philosophy behind the nonsense that they are trying to push on us. On Saturn, you have Damocles. Just the other day, 2 days ago maybe, there was a Damocloid asteroid falling quite close to us. This happens. All these Damocloid asteroids, which are Earth crossers, are kind of dangerous for us. One day, one of them will hit us, and there goes our lives. But anyhow, so Damocles is, of course, impending danger. And when you look around the world, how this minor clash started in the Ukraine between two Slav people, two brother people, really, they are brothers. They are in the same language family. They have been living together for ages. And how this escalates into some sort of World War III. It's really interesting to watch. Of course, it is interesting. It would be interesting if it weren't so dumb and dangerous. And Hypatia was the mathematician who was also the librarian of the Alexandrian Library. And she had this very interesting practice to call on anyone who would visit the library to bring new scrolls of any scientific work, and then the person could exchange it for something else. So there was this constant flock of new stuff coming in and circulating. So she was the first true librarian. Of course, she was killed sometimes in the 5th century, and the whole place was burned down. So there goes the age-old knowledge of humankind. And Aesculapia is the Aesculapia meant the places where Asclepius was healing. These were caves where the patient had to sleep with snakes, and then he had to dream, and whatever he dreamt, Asclepius then and the other doctors tried to interpret the dream itself, and then choose some sort of remedy for him in order to heal. And then Enif, which is Epsilon Pegasus, which is the mouth of the horse. And in Hungarian folklore, we have the Taltos horse, which is, of course, a speaking horse who gives you truth and also can fly. And so it's a very interesting mixture of either Pegasus or other horses that have healing power and magical powers as well. And this is the mouth of the horse. So we definitely need some sort of healing for the world. On the North Node, you have Shiva, which is the destroyer of the Trimurti. Hel, which is she's the underworld lady of the underworld in Norse mythology. And then two stars, Sheraton and Meshartim, Beta and Gamma Aries. These are very, very close to each other. And Meshartim is important because in 400 BC, it was at the vernal equinox, and they called it the first star of Aries. And also because the January 1st chart, in the January 1st chart, you have the moon in that position. And then on the South Node, you have Narcissus, love yourself. And on Trans-Pluto, you have Gisha, Abundancia, and Harmonia. Well, Gisha is the ancient feminine role, let's put it this way, of course. And of course, it is linked to earthly pleasures, whatever the earth can provide us with. Abundancia, abundance, is the goddess of abundance in Roman mythology, who is providing us with everything we need. And harmonia is something that we need to create for ourselves in order to have both abundance and earthly pleasures. So this is the space-time moment. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.